Let me be clear, we don't seat your kind up front." The words fell hard, sharp enough to cut through the clinking of silverware and soft jazz floating above the marble floor. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every head in the restaurant turned toward the hostess stand, where Megan Sloan stood tall in her royal blue dress, confidence dripping like venom. Her hand rested on the torn reservation list as if it were a weapon. Across from her, the woman she'd just humiliated didn't flinch. Calm, centered, composed. Her name, though no one knew it yet, was Dr. Naomi Blake. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Naomi. Megan's smile was too polished to be kind. "Look, I am sure you made a mistake," she said, her tone syrupy and cruel. "This isn't the type of place that takes walk-ins, especially not in that outfit." A ripple of laughter moved through the front row of waiting guests. Naomi's suit, clean, cobalt, understated, became the punchline. She didn't answer. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was warning. "Check again," Naomi said, her voice low but deliberate. "The reservation is under Blake, Dr. Naomi Blake." Megan scoffed. "Doctor, huh? That is cute." She turned to her screen, pretending to type. The lie was practiced. "No Blake here. Maybe you meant the diner across the street." A few phones lifted discreetly. A teenage boy mouthed "Oh my God" to his friend. The room smelled of money and prejudice, both too familiar to be surprising. Naomi's hand stayed still at her side, but her eyes had already scanned the space, the chandelier reflections, the polished brass railing, the servers frozen mid-step. It was her building, her brand, her name printed on every wine list. And yet, here she was being erased inside her own creation. "Security," Megan called, her voice growing bolder with the performance. "Please escort this guest outside. We have real clients arriving any minute." A man in a black uniform moved forward, radio crackling. "Ma'am, let's not make this a scene." Naomi turned her head, slow and measured. "The scene was made the moment you opened your mouth." The room tensed. Somewhere behind the crowd, a young waitress, Rachel Kim, whispered to another server, "That name's on the VIP list." The other shook his head, afraid to intervene. Megan shot Rachel a look that said, "Stay silent if you like your job." Naomi exhaled once, controlled, centered. "You have one more chance," she said softly. "Look again." Megan smirked, picked up the printed reservation list, and tore it clean down the middle. "Nothing to look at," she sneered. "You are not on it." "Ugh." Gasps rippled through the lobby. One phone camera zoomed closer. Naomi didn't blink. She simply stared at the torn paper falling like snow across the marble counter. In her chest, a calm fire stirred, the kind that doesn't burn. It purifies. She had seen this before, heard it before, lived it before. But this time, she wasn't leaving quietly. Her voice came steady, razor smooth. "Then I suggest you call your general manager," she said. Megan tilted her chin high. "And who should I say is asking?" Naomi met her eyes. "The owner." Naomi did not move. The room had turned against her, but her composure held the line. The manager's laughter echoed across the dining room like a small performance meant for the wealthy faces watching from their velvet seats. Someone whispered, "That is embarrassing." And another voice answered, "She should have known better." The comment slid across the marble floor like oil. Megan folded the torn reservation slip in half and tossed it into a silver waste bin. "You see, ma'am," she said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy, "we have to protect the atmosphere here. People pay for privacy and exclusivity, you understand." The words privacy and exclusivity hung heavy, like new names for segregation. Naomi placed both hands on the counter, calm, precise. "I understand more than you think." Her voice carried enough gravity to still the sound of forks and knives around them. "Then please step aside," Megan replied. "Security will help you find the exit." Tom, the guard in a dark uniform, moved closer. His posture was professional but uncertain, the kind of man who had followed orders his whole life without ever questioning who gave them. "Ma'am," he said softly, "let us walk you out quietly." Naomi looked at him. Her tone was neither soft nor sharp. It was final. "Do not touch me." The moment stretched. The clatter of a plate somewhere in the back kitchen made everyone flinch. Rachel Kim, the young server standing near the host podium, finally stepped forward. "Miss Sloan," she said, voice shaking, I printed that list this morning. There was a reservation under Dr. Naomi Blake. Megan turned on her instantly. Rachel, I said stay out of this. Her voice rose an octave higher, fueled by panic now. You are new here. You do not know how this place works. Rachel swallowed hard but did not step back. I know when something is wrong, she said. The air changed. Guests began recording openly now. Screens glowed like a constellation of witnesses. Naomi's expression remained steady, but behind her stillness, something old stirred the memory of another doorway, another refusal, another room that said she did not belong. She drew a slow breath. You called security on the person who signs your paycheck, she said quietly. That will be the mistake you remember. Megan blinked, her confidence faltering for the first time. Excuse me? Naomi reached for her phone, pressed a single button, and held it to her ear. Her voice was calm, clipped, deliberate. Activate Internal Audit Protocol 7 location, Citrine Prime, Chicago branch. The color drained from Megan's face. What do you think you are doing? Naomi's answer came without pause. Something you should have done before you chose to humiliate a customer checking the truth. The red light of the phone camera closest to them reflected off the counter. The crowd had gone silent. For the first time, it was Megan who looked small. Naomi turned her head slightly, eyes steady, and said, Now we will see who belongs. The phone at Naomi's ear emitted a soft tone before a clear voice answered. Protocol 7 confirmed, Dr. Blake. Live audit is now active. Megan's face stiffened. Doctor who? She said, her words trembling between disbelief and arrogance. Naomi did not reply. She kept her eyes on the floor-length window that mirrored the entire dining room, each table, each spectator, each judgment frozen in reflection. Begin by reviewing all reservation logs for today, Naomi instructed calmly into the phone. Mark every denial and verify customer identity. Oh. Yes, ma'am, the voice responded. The air thickened. Every person within earshot sensed a shift they could not name. Megan tried to reclaim control. That is enough of this drama, she snapped, looking at the security guard. Tom, remove her now. But Tom hesitated. Ma'am, he said to Megan, I think we should slow down. You think? Megan hissed. Do your job. Rachel Kim stepped forward again. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. The reservation list is digital. I can open the file on my tablet. Her name is on it. Megan spun around. You are suspended. Hand over your badge. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Naomi's eyes lifted to meet Rachel's. You do not have to speak further, she said softly. You already did enough. Rachel's eyes glistened. Someone had to. Across the room, an older man at the bar called out, She is right. I heard everything from here. Others nodded. One woman said, You cannot talk to people that way. Cameras caught every angle, every word. Megan turned, her voice breaking between fury and fear. You do not understand who you are talking to. Naomi's gaze was calm, almost surgical. Neither do you. At that moment, her assistant's voice echoed through the phone speaker. Dr. Blake, the system has confirmed your ownership tag on this property. Your signature appears on every operational document. Shall we proceed to disciplinary review? The silence was absolute. Only the sound of the jazz track still looping from the speakers filled the background, now haunting in its calm. Naomi said, Proceed. Her tone was simple, unshaken. She set the phone on the counter, on speaker, for the entire room to hear. Logging incident, racial bias, verbal misconduct, and denial of service toward company owner, the assistant's voice declared. All security feeds have been archived. HR alert has been sent. Megan's lips parted, but no sound emerged. The color drained from her face as the meaning landed. Wait, she whispered. You are saying this is your restaurant? Naomi met her eyes. I am saying you chose the wrong woman to humiliate. The guests began clapping softly, unsure if it was safe but unable to contain it. Rachel covered her mouth, half in shock, half in relief. Tom the guard took one slow step back, his shoulders sagging as realization settled in. Naomi's voice cut through the applause like calm thunder. Now, she said, let us finish the service you interrupted. The restaurant had gone completely still. Every screen that had once glowed with curiosity now shimmered with disbelief. Megan's breath came short and sharp, the sound of a person realizing their own collapse in real time. This is insane, she muttered. You cannot just walk in here and claim. Naomi lifted a hand, not to silence her, but to draw the line. Claim? No. I built this. Her voice was even, but it carried the weight of marble. When I designed this space, I said every guest who walks through those doors would be treated with dignity. You broke that policy the moment you opened your mouth. Rachel stood rooted near the hostess podium. She really is the owner, she whispered, mostly to herself, as if saying it out loud would make it real. Megan tried to steady her voice, but panic twisted every word. Look, we can talk about this privately. There is no need to make a scene. Naomi turned slightly, her reflection shimmering in the wall-length window. The scene was yours, she said. The consequences are mine. Her phone chimed again. The same calm voice from the audit system spoke through the speaker. Dr. Blake, internal review complete. Manager Megan Sloan is listed as acting supervisor. 3 prior complaints have been located under her name involving discriminatory remarks. Would you like to initiate termination protocol? Every eye in the room turned to Naomi. The audience of diners, once silent spectators, now held their breath like witnesses in a courtroom. Naomi spoke without raising her tone. Effective immediately. Terminate her access. Lock her employee credentials and file a compliance report to headquarters. A soft electronic ping followed. Megan's ID card in her lanyard blinked red, then black. The security tablet on the counter locked itself with a sharp digital click. Megan's face drained of color. You cannot be serious, she stammered. Naomi met her gaze. I am never anything else. Tom, the security guard, cleared his throat and lowered his radio. Ma'am, should I escort her out? Naomi paused, studying him for a long moment. No, she said. Let her walk herself out. That will be the first decision she makes on her own today. The words landed heavy. Megan's lips trembled. She looked around for support, but no one moved. Even the diners who had once snickered now stared down at their plates, ashamed of their silence. Rachel stepped closer to Naomi, her voice quiet but certain. Thank you for not walking away. Naomi gave a faint nod. Silence has a cost. I paid it once, never again. Outside, through the glass doors, the late afternoon light poured in golden and steady. Naomi straightened her jacket, eyes soft but resolute. Let us reset this floor, she said. Guests are waiting. Her calm was not performance. It was legacy built one humiliation at a time and reclaimed without raising her voice. Megan's footsteps echoed against the tile as she stumbled backward, her heels scraping against the marble like the final sounds of authority fading. She looked around, desperate for an ally, but no one met her eyes. Every employee who had once followed her lead now stood silent, heads low, unsure whether to move or breathe. Even the guests who had earlier enjoyed the show were frozen, caught between guilt and awe. Naomi turned slightly toward the restaurant floor, her voice calm and measured. If anyone feels uncomfortable with what they have witnessed, you are free to leave. No one is forced to stay in the presence of truth. No one moved. Rachel Kim took a hesitant step forward. Dr. Blake, she said softly. What happens now? Naomi's gaze softened. Now, we do what should have been done from the beginning. We serve with respect. Her phone vibrated once on the counter. The voice of her assistant came through again. Dr. Blake, HR has confirmed the termination. Do you wish to proceed with an internal statement to staff? Naomi replied, her tone steady. Yes. Patch me through to the full employee network. The restaurant speakers hummed faintly, then carried her voice through every hallway, kitchen, and lounge. This is Dr. Naomi Blake, she began. Today, an incident occurred at Citrine Prime that does not represent who we are or who we serve. Every person, guest, or employee deserves to be treated with dignity. Effective immediately, management will undergo mandatory equity and ethics retraining. Failure to comply will result in permanent removal from the company. Megan stood by the doorway, frozen. The weight of Naomi's words pinned her in place more effectively than any guard could. She turned to speak, but nothing came. The applause that followed was quiet at first, a few claps, uncertain but sincere. Then, like rain gathering strength, it grew until the sound filled the room. Naomi lifted a hand slightly, asking for calm. Do not applaud me, she said. Applaud the moment you choose to stand when it would be easier to look away. Rachel's eyes shone with something between admiration and relief. I have never seen anyone handle hate that quietly, she said. Naomi smiled faintly. It is not silence. It is precision. The cameras were still recording, But now they captured something different. Not a confrontation, but restoration. Guests began to return to their meals, yet every movement felt slower, more aware. The noise of plates and glasses resumed, but the air was different, cleaner somehow. Megan turned one last time toward Naomi, voice breaking. "You could have destroyed me publicly." Naomi met her eyes without anger. "I did not come to destroy you. I came to remind you who built the table you tried to keep me from." The room fell silent again. For a moment, the entire restaurant seemed to breathe as one, absorbing the lesson. Then Naomi looked toward the staff and said quietly, "Now, let us begin again." The applause faded into a thoughtful hush. The sound of rain began tapping softly against the restaurant's tall windows, as if the city itself had paused to listen. Naomi stood behind the counter, her reflection framed by the dim glow of the pendant lights. She was composed, yet her eyes carried a quiet fatigue, the kind that comes from years of endurance, not hours of conflict. Her assistant's voice came through the phone once more. "Dr. Blake, local news alerts have begun reporting the incident. Would you like to issue a press statement?" Naomi considered this for a moment. "No," she said. "The story will tell itself. It always does." "Oh." Rachel looked toward her, hesitant. "Are you sure you do not want to correct the narrative before it spreads?" Naomi's response came slow and deliberate. When truth stands on its own, it does not need rescue. It just needs time. She turned to the guests, her voice steady but warm. "For those of you dining today, please accept my apology for the interruption. Your meals will be fully covered by the house. What happened here is not hospitality, it is history repeating itself, and today it stopped." A middle-aged man at the bar spoke up. "Dr. Blake, you handled that with more grace than most of us ever could." Naomi nodded once. "Grace is not weakness. It is control in the presence of injustice." Her words settled deep into the silence. In one corner, a woman wiped her eyes. Another guest lowered his phone and simply whispered, "Thank you." "Oh." Behind the counter, Rachel began clearing the torn papers that had once been the reservation list. Naomi stopped her. "Leave them," she said quietly. "Let people see what arrogance looks like when it tries to erase someone." Rachel paused, then nodded. "You are turning it into a lesson." Naomi met her gaze. "Everything cruel can become a classroom if you stay awake long enough to learn." At the door, Megan still lingered, trapped between pride and shame. The rain outside had become steady, streaking the glass with silver trails. Naomi walked toward her, stopping only a few feet away. "Megan," she said, her tone even, "I do not hate you, but I will not forget you." Megan's voice cracked. "Why? Why not just fire me and be done with it?" Naomi's answer was quiet, almost tender. "Because this was never about firing you. It was about reminding everyone watching that dignity is not a performance. It is policy." Megan's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out into the rain. The door closed behind her with a muted click, and the restaurant exhaled as if released from a long tension. Naomi stood still for a moment longer, her hands resting lightly on the counter. "Now," she said softly, "let us feed people the way we were meant to, without prejudice, without fear." And as the staff began to move again, the room felt lighter, as though the storm outside had washed more than just the windows. The rain kept falling, a soft percussion against the glass, steady and cleansing. The restaurant had transformed from a battleground into something close to sacred silence. Naomi stood near the entrance now, watching the ripples of reflection on the floor where the marble met the light. The torn reservation papers still lay scattered across the counter, a small monument to what had just been undone. Rachel approached quietly, a towel in hand, her voice gentle but uncertain. "Do you want me to clean this up now?" Naomi looked at her and smiled faintly. "Not yet. Let it sit there for a moment. People need to remember what ignorance looks like before we erase it." Across the room, guests began whispering softly, but this time the tone had changed. It was not gossip anymore, it was reflection. One woman murmured to her husband, "Can you imagine being treated that way in a place you own?" He shook his head slowly, his eyes lowered. Naomi turned back toward the center of the dining floor. "Rachel," she said, "bring the staff together." Within minutes, a small circle formed near the counter. Servers, hosts, bartenders, and kitchen staff, all uncertain but attentive. Naomi's posture was calm, her tone instructional yet kind. "We cannot pretend this never happened. Pretending only protects the problem. So we will remember, and we will rebuild. A young bartender asked, "How do we start?" Naomi's answer came without hesitation. By unlearning. You cannot serve people properly if you only serve the ones who look like you. There was silence again. Rachel nodded slowly, the weight of those words sinking in. Naomi continued, "This brand was born because of rooms like this, rooms where people decided who belonged and who did not. I built these restaurants to end that story. What happened today will not end it for me, it will end it for us." Her assistant's voice came through the phone once more, projected over the internal speaker system. "Dr. Blake, social media activity regarding the incident is rising. The video has already reached over 100,000 views." Ugh. The employees glanced at each other, startled. Naomi did not flinch. "Let it rise," she said. "Maybe it will teach someone watching that the quietest person in the room is often the one who wrote the rules." The guests began clapping again, not for spectacle this time, but for understanding. Naomi nodded once, acknowledging their respect but grounding it in humility. "Do not thank me," she said. "Thank the truth. It is the only thing that never asks for a reservation." Hell. Rachel smiled through quiet tears. "You really meant it when you said silence has a cost." Naomi looked around the room, her gaze lingering on every face, every unsure but hopeful expression. "Yes," she said softly, "but so does courage. And today, we finally paid the right one." Outside, the rain began to slow. The sound of plates clinking returned, soft and deliberate, as life resumed not as before, but better. The storm had passed, leaving behind a hush that felt heavier than sound. Through the large windows, the city glowed beneath a clean sky, every reflection washed clear. Inside, the rhythm of the restaurant began again, forks, glasses, the low hum of conversation, but something fundamental had shifted. The space felt honest now, stripped of pretense, as if the walls themselves had learned to listen. Naomi moved slowly through the dining area, stopping at each table. She did not hover like a boss inspecting her employees. She moved like someone reclaiming a home. "Is everything to your liking?" she asked a young couple, her tone warm but steady. They nodded quickly, almost shyly. "It is perfect," the man said. "Thank you for what you did." Naomi smiled, but her reply was simple. "All I did was stay. That is sometimes enough." At the far end of the restaurant, Rachel stood beside the kitchen door, watching. The staff had fallen back into rhythm, yet the energy had changed. Conversations were softer. Eye contact lingered longer. She turned to a coworker and whispered, "It feels different in here." The coworker nodded. "It feels honest." Naomi returned to the counter where the torn reservation list still lay in fragments. She gathered the pieces carefully, not as evidence, but as a reminder. "Do not throw this away yet," she told Rachel. "We will keep it in the training room. Let every new hire see what happens when arrogance replaces service." Rachel blinked in surprise. "You want to show them this?" "Yes," Naomi said, "because memory is the best teacher, and I want this company to have a long one." Her phone vibrated again, and she answered without breaking composure. "Yes?" Her assistant's voice carried through clearly. "Dr. Blake, corporate headquarters is asking if you would like to release an official internal memo summarizing the event." Naomi looked around the room, at the faces now calm and aware. "Yes," she said. "Tell them the summary is simple. Prejudice walked in today and did not walk out alive." The assistant paused for a moment, then said quietly, "Understood." Naomi placed the phone down, her expression unreadable, her voice a shade lower. "We cannot change how people see us, but we can change what they learn from seeing us." Rachel whispered, "I will remember that." A small ripple of laughter and conversation began again, but this time it sounded different, less like noise, more like renewal. Naomi stepped back and took one final look at the room. "This," she said softly to no one in particular, "is what justice sounds like when it finally exhales." She turned toward the glass doors, watching as the last drops of rain slid down the pane. The world outside was the same, yet everything inside had changed. For the first time in hours, Naomi allowed herself a quiet breath, full and certain. The day had not broken her, it had clarified her purpose. As the evening light dimmed, the restaurant glowed with a quiet warmth. The hum of conversation blended with the low rhythm of jazz returning through the speakers. For the first time that day, Naomi allowed herself to sit. She chose a corner table near the window, the same view every guest saw when they first arrived. Outside, the streets reflected the city's pulse, cars passing, umbrellas closing, life moving forward as if unaware that something remarkable had just taken place inside. Rachel approached cautiously, carrying 2 cups of black coffee. "You look like you could use one," she said, setting a cup in front of Naomi. Naomi smiled faintly. "Thank you, Rachel. It feels different to drink in a place that finally remembers who it is." Rachel hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever get tired of fighting these moments? Of having to prove what you have already earned?" Naomi's gaze drifted toward the window, her tone thoughtful. "Tired, yes, but not finished. Every generation inherits 2 things, the wound and the will to heal it. My parents could not sit in places like this. My grandparents could not walk through doors like these. The least I can do is make sure no one gets pushed out of them again." Rachel listened, her eyes shining. "That is why people follow you, Dr. Blake." Naomi shook her head gently. "No, they do not follow me. They follow the truth that refuses to stay quiet." Across the room, a young man who had filmed part of the incident earlier approached. He looked nervous, holding his phone at his side. "Dr. Blake," he began, "I was one of the people recording earlier. The video is everywhere now. People are calling you an inspiration." Naomi studied him for a moment before answering. "Do not call me that," she said softly. "Call me a mirror. Inspiration fades, reflection lasts." The man nodded slowly, understanding settling over him. "I will remember that." She gave a quiet smile. "Good. Then it was worth filming." Rachel glanced toward the bar, where a few guests were still discussing what they had seen. "You changed something in them," she said. Naomi replied, "Change begins when shame meets truth. It is not me who changed them. It was the moment they saw themselves clearly." Her assistant's voice came through the phone one last time. "Dr. Blake, corporate headquarters has received hundreds of emails from customers expressing support. They are requesting an official statement from you directly." Naomi looked around the room, the same tables, the same walls, but a new atmosphere entirely. "Tell them I will make a statement," she said, "but not about the incident, about the standard. Remind them that equality is not a policy, it is the price of admission." As Rachel stepped away, Naomi took a slow sip of her coffee. The flavor was bold, unyielding, like the day itself. She placed the cup down and said quietly to herself, "Let the world watch. It is time they learn what leadership looks like when it does not apologize for existing." Night had settled over the city like a soft curtain. Through the tall glass windows, the lights of downtown shimmered against the wet pavement. Inside Citrine Prime, the last few guests lingered over dessert, speaking in hushed tones, as though still honoring the weight of what had happened earlier. The staff moved quietly, focused, humbled. The air no longer carried arrogance or tension, it carried respect. Naomi remained at her corner table, her posture still impeccable even in rest. She was reviewing reports on her tablet, the numbers of her empire glowing faintly on the screen. But behind the financial figures was something more human, an ache that never fully left her. She had won the battle, yes, but the victory always felt bittersweet. Rachel approached once more, now dressed in her coat and holding her bag. "Dr. Blake," she said, "I just wanted to say thank you before I go home, for standing up the way you did. You made me believe it is possible to be powerful and kind at the same time." Naomi looked up, her expression soft. "Rachel, the world will always confuse kindness with weakness. Never let them teach you that lie. Real strength is quiet because it does not need to prove itself." Rachel nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I will remember that." "Good," Naomi said gently. "Now go rest. Tomorrow we rebuild, and I will need people who remember why we started." As Rachel left, Naomi's assistant called once again, this time through a direct video link. "Dr. Blake," she said, "the headquarters has finalized the audit. The report shows 3 prior bias complaints connected to the local management team. The board is asking whether to release the findings publicly." Naomi took a breath before answering. "Yes, transparency is not punishment. It is prevention." Her assistant's tone grew respectful. "Understood. The file will be published first thing in the morning." Naomi ended the call and looked out through the glass, where the city lights glowed like quiet witnesses. She spoke softly, more to herself than anyone else. They tried to turn dignity into a privilege. Tonight proved it will always be a right. Oh, quote. At that moment, One of the remaining guests, a gray-haired woman sitting alone near the window, rose from her seat and approached Naomi's table. "Dr. Blake," she said gently, "I wanted to thank you. I was in the corner when it happened. My granddaughter is biracial, and she saw you stand your ground. You gave her a kind of courage I could never teach." Naomi smiled with genuine warmth. "Then it was worth every minute of discomfort." The woman nodded, her eyes glistening. "The world needs more people like you." Naomi shook her head slowly. "No, ma'am, the world just needs fewer people afraid to see what is wrong." The woman smiled through her tears and whispered, "Amen to that." As she walked away, Naomi looked once more around the dining room, the tables gleaming, the staff working quietly, the light of redemption hanging in the air. It was no longer a scene of humiliation, but of transformation. And for the first time that night, Naomi allowed herself to smile, not out of pride, but out of peace. The hour grew late. Outside, the streetlights burned steady, casting long shadows that stretched across the rain-slick pavement. The restaurant was nearly empty now, save for a few quiet guests finishing their coffee and the low murmur of staff cleaning up for the night. Naomi stood by the counter again, the same place where humiliation had first taken aim at her hours earlier. Only now, the energy had shifted completely. What had once been the stage of insult had become a symbol of order reclaimed. Her phone buzzed with another call from corporate headquarters. She answered calmly. "Yes?" Her assistant's voice came through, steady and composed. "Dr. Blake, the internal audit report is complete and signed. The staff involved have been formally terminated, and the compliance office has filed a public notice of corrective action. Would you like to deliver a final message for internal distribution?" Naomi looked around at the staff still present, Rachel wiping tables, two young servers folding napkins, the bartender resetting glassware. "Yes," she said. "Put me on live feed." The assistant confirmed. "You are connected." Naomi drew a breath and spoke clearly. Her voice carried through every speaker in every branch of the citrine chain across the country. "This message is for every member of our team. What happened here today is not a scandal. It is a mirror. If you look into it and see yourself, then change what you see. Hospitality is not service for the wealthy. It is respect for the human being in front of you. The moment you forget that, you stop working for this company." She paused, letting the words breathe through the quiet room. "We cannot erase what happened, but we can decide what happens next. That choice begins with each of you. The next time someone walks through your doors, do not ask what they look like. Ask how they should be treated. The answer is always the same, with dignity." Her assistant's voice returned softly. "Message recorded and transmitted, Dr. Blake." "Thank you," Naomi said. She ended the call and placed the phone on the counter. The last of the employees gathered near her, drawn by the gravity of her presence. Rachel stepped forward. "Dr. Blake, may I ask something?" "Of course," Naomi replied. Rachel's voice was quiet, but steady. "When they spoke to you like that, when she said those words, how did you not lose control?" Naomi thought for a moment. "Because losing control gives them ownership twice, once over your dignity and once over your reaction. I learned a long time ago that calm is the loudest form of power." The room fell still again, her words landing heavier than any reprimand. From outside, a car horn sounded faintly in the distance. Naomi reached for her coat, her movements deliberate, her expression serene. "Close up carefully," she said. "Tomorrow, we start again, but this time, we start right." As she turned toward the door, Rachel called softly, "Dr. Blake?" Naomi looked back. Rachel said, "Thank you for making silence sound like strength." Naomi smiled, her eyes kind but unyielding. It always was. People just stopped listening. And with that, she walked out into the cool night, leaving the light burning behind her as a promise. Outside, the night air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of rain and pavement. Naomi stepped onto the sidewalk, the city humming quietly around her. The lights reflected off the wet street, turning every surface into a mirror. Behind her, the glow of citrine prime spilled through the glass doors, no longer harsh, but soft and alive. The building she had built had faced its own test and passed. She paused for a moment beneath the awning, her reflection joining hers in the window pane. For a long breath, she simply stood there, neither triumphant nor weary, only grounded. The kind of calm that does not come from victory, but from alignment when your actions finally match your purpose. Her driver approached from the curb, umbrella in hand. "Dr. Blake," he said gently, Car is ready. Naomi nodded, but her eyes lingered on the restaurant behind her. Do you hear that? She asked. The driver listened. The sound of laughter carried faintly from inside, small, genuine, unforced. Naomi smiled. That is the sound of healing. It starts quiet, but it grows. As she stepped into the car, her phone buzzed once more with an incoming message. It was from headquarters. Public response overwhelmingly positive. Thousands of messages under the tag number Citrine stands for all. She set the phone face down on the seat beside her. Let them talk, she murmured. Justice has its own voice. Through the window, she watched the restaurant shrink into the distance, its lights shimmering like a lighthouse in the rain. For a moment, her mind drifted back to the first time she was denied a table, years ago, in a place that thought her presence was a mistake. She had left that night humiliated. Tonight, she left whole. Naomi leaned back, her voice low, almost to herself. You do not have to shout to change the world. You only have to stand long enough for it to see you. The car turned the corner, vanishing into the pulse of the city. And inside Citrine Prime, the lights stayed on, steady, unwavering, a beacon of what dignity looks like when it finally takes its seat at the table.